Myanmar's 7.2 earthquake and civil war, that forgotten disaster of the decade. Fear is everything. Whether you are a politician, an actor, a religious leader, a CEO, or an entire country, if you don't have good fear, you are basically invisible. In Gen Z's terms, no fear, no reason. You are not slaying, you are just there. And that brings us to Myanmar, a country that's been stuck in a brutal civil war since 2021. But you probably didn't hear much about it, right? That's because Myanmar has zero fear. They aren't white and like Ukraine. They don't have a massive religious community backing them like Palestine. They don't have billionaire influencers lobbying for them like Israel. No strong narrative, no viral outrage, just silence. The recent earthquake Myanmar finally makes headline, but for the wrong reason. But recently Myanmar actually did poop off in the news. Why? Because a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit the country, taking things up both literally and figuratively. Suddenly the world has forced to acknowledge Myanmar for a brief moment. And certainly for the first time in a years, Myanmar was in the news. Not because of the war, not because of the suffering, but because nature had decided to shake things up. For a brief moment, people look at Myanmar, but as the headline faded, so did the attention. Because that's the ugly truth of geopolitics. If your suffering does not fit into the essay narrative, the world moves on. Myanmar civil war, the conflict that's been ignored since 2021. Let's rewind before the earthquake and look at what was really happening in the country before Mother Nature stepped in to give them a fraction of the attention they should have already had. Since 2021, Myanmar has been a war zone, torn apart by a brutal civil war between the military junta, a rebel tribal rebel group, the military junta, backed by China. The ruling dictatorship thus staged a coup and took control of the country. Various tribal rebel groups backed by the US, ethnic minorities, factions that oppose the military's rule and have taken up arms to fight back. And this is not some minor skirmish. This is a full-blown war that has killed over 75,692 people as of February 2025 for armed conflict, location and event data. Displaced between 3.2 to 3.5 million people internally. Force 1,49,000 refugees to flee the country as per the UN data, December 2024. But unless you have been actively following niche geopolitical news, you probably didn't know any of this because again, Myanmar has no fear. How it all started. Myanmar's never-ending cycle of coups. Myanmar has a long history of military coups, but the latest one happened in 2021, right after the country's election. The military, not happy with the results, decided, nah, democracy isn't our vibe, and staged a coup, arresting elected leaders and seizing control according to the BBC. At first, people protested peacefully in the streets, but when the military responded with bullets instead of negotiation, those protests turned into a full-blown armed rebellion. How the civil war has destroyed everyday's life. Now, it's easy to talk about war in the numbers, casualties, statistics, displacement, but war isn't just numbers. It's real people whose lives are completely destroyed. Take May, a 26 years old woman who spent 7 years in medical school to become a doctor. She wanted to help people. She had a plan. Then boom, military coup, war, economic collapse, suddenly her father got sick and her $415 a month doctor salary was not enough. Despite, she had to make a brutal choice. Stay a doctor and watch her family starve or do what she had to do to survive. Now she works as a date card. In Mandalay, she turned to prostitute earning more as she did as a doctor. It's hard to accept. She says that's after all my study I am doing to this survive. This is applicable for countless women there with respectable backgrounds like doctors, nurses, teachers, etc. according to the New York Times. The Guardian covers a story of Anina, who carries a teddy bear with her along with both the flag of the USA and the Chin militia, a teenager who just turned 18. She used to like doing TikTok dances. Instead, she picked up her sniper rifle. One, a Manchester City fan who loved cartoons now she fights for a thin militia along with her boyfriend, resisting the militia junta. She's been in the war for 4 years now, trained to kill or to be killed. She lost count of how many people she shot. But in Myanmar, sir, you grow up fast or you don't grow up at all. There are just two stories out of millions. And it's not just adults. The UN has confirmed that more than 100 of children as young as 12 are being recruited into the fight, some by the military, others by resistance groups like Aninas. Why the world does not care about Myanmar? A forgotten crisis. If this was happening in the country with better peer, we would see viral hashtags, protest, global outrage, but Myanmar is off the radar. The media does not care because there is no as a narrative. The military junta is a dictatorship, but the rebel group aren't exactly sent either. And Western powers don't give the backing of the media machine. No one is tweeting hashtag pray for Myanmar. No one is changing their profile picture. And yet, the war rages on, the people suffer, the country bleeds. Final thoughts of conclusion. Will Myanmar be forgotten? So what happens next? Right now, Myanmar's future looks bleak. The civil war isn't slowing down. The military junta refuses to back down. The resistance won't give up. And international community, they are too busy arguing over conflicts that already dominates the headline. Myanmar is left to the fight alone, suffer alone and die alone. Unless something changes, unless people start paying attention. Because if history has taught us anything, it's this. The world does not care unless you make it care. And Myanmar, they deserve better. Call to action. Don't let Myanmar disappear. Myanmar wars never got trending hashtags. Its people never got mass protests in Western capitals. And now after 7.2 magnitude earthquake that killed over 3,000 people during recording, the little attention they finally got will fade just as quickly. And the worst part, ongoing civil war is making rescue and relief efforts a logistical nightmare, with fighting, blockades, and collapsing infrastructure turning a natural disaster into an even bigger tragedy. Being the first responder to the humanitarian crisis, India launched Operation Brahma to provide necessary support, include search and rescue, humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and medical assistance. 75,692 dead, over 3 million displaced, and yet silent. Because in today's world, if you are not in the right headlines, you don't exist. Myanmar never made the headlines. So tell me, who will remember them? But maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have to be this way. If this hits you even a little, share this. Because Myanmar won't get prayer unless we give it to them. Prayers for the people suffering in this war and this devastated by the earthquake. This world is collapsing, literally and figuratively. The least we can do is not let their story vanish.